Hey family. Just wanted to take a moment to say a massive thank you from the bottom of my heart. Your comments, support, and loyalty mean absolutely everything to me. I see you showing up video after video, sharing your thoughts, and making this community what it is. This channel wouldn't be the same without each and every one of you. Your enthusiasm keeps me motivated, and I'm so grateful you've chosen to spend your time here. Much love to you all. Red heart. She felt it before she saw it, that prickle at the back of her neck, the feeling of being watched. The office was supposed to be empty at this hour. Everyone had gone home long ago, leaving behind the ghost-like hum of computers and the occasional flicker of motion sensor lights in distant hallways. But something wasn't right. The music still played from her phone, the beats filling the wide-open space of the executive floor, but her body had frozen mid-movement. Jasmine stood still, her breath caught in her chest. The reflection in the floor-to-ceiling windows showed only her silhouette against the backdrop of the city lights spread out like fallen stars 40 floors below. But then, there it was. A shadow moved. Someone was there, watching her dance when she thought she was alone. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she slowly turned around, the music still pulsing through the empty office. That's when she saw him, tall, imposing, leaning against the doorframe with arms crossed. Mr. Richardson. Her boss. The CEO of Richardson Industries. The man whose coffee she prepared each morning, whose schedule she managed with military precision, whose life she organized while remaining practically invisible. Except now she wasn't invisible at all. She was the only thing he was looking at. I didn't know anyone was still here, she said, her voice sounding smaller than she intended. Her hand reached for her phone, cutting the music off mid-beat, plunging the office into a silence that felt even heavier than the music. Don't stop on my account, he said, his voice deep and smooth like expensive whiskey. His eyes never left hers, and something in them made her stomach twist in a way that wasn't entirely unpleasant. Jasmine fumbled with her phone, shoving it into her pocket. I stay late sometimes to finish work and dancing helps me think. The explanation sounded weak even to her own ears. Mr. Richardson stepped into the room, the light from the city casting half his face in shadow. You've been my assistant for over a year now, and I never knew you could dance like that. She swallowed hard. There's a lot you don't know about me, Mr. Richardson. A small smile curved his lips. Call me Thomas when we're alone. The way he said alone made her realize just how alone they were, 40 floors up, past midnight, in a building that had emptied hours ago. Just the two of them and the watching city below. I should go, she said, reaching for her bag, trying to ignore the way her hands trembled slightly. Of course. He stepped aside to clear her path to the door, but as she moved past him, he spoke again. Jasmine? She stopped, not turning around, feeling the heat of him just inches behind her. I'd like to see you dance again sometime. She didn't answer, couldn't answer. Instead, she walked to the elevator on legs that felt suddenly unsteady, pressed the button, and waited for the doors to open, feeling his eyes on her back the entire time. Only when the elevator doors closed behind her did she let out the breath she'd been holding. She leaned against the wall, her heart still racing. What had just happened? And why, despite her embarrassment and confusion, did part of her want it to happen again? The next morning would be awkward, she knew that. How could she look him in the eye and hand him his coffee after what had happened? How could things ever go back to normal? But as the elevator descended, carrying her away from the man who had watched her with such intensity, a different question formed in her mind. Did she want things to go back to normal? The truth was, Jasmine had been invisible for too long. In a company of thousands, she was just another face, another cog in the machine. Even as his assistant, she was more function than person to most people in the building. But tonight, for the first time, Thomas Richardson had really seen her. And the way he looked at her made her feel like maybe, just maybe, he'd been wanting to see her all along. The elevator reached the ground floor, doors sliding open to reveal the empty lobby. As Jasmine stepped out, her phone buzzed with a text message. She pulled it out, expecting it to be from her roommate asking where she was so late at night. Instead, the screen showed a message from a number she recognized instantly, the private line of the CEO himself. Your dancing is beautiful. Like you. I'm sorry if I startled you. Sleep well, Jasmine. She stared at the message, reading it over and over as she walked through the silent lobby toward the exit, her footsteps echoing on the marble floor. This wasn't just her boss appreciating her dance skills. This was something else entirely. As she pushed through the revolving door into the cool night air, Jasmine knew that whatever had started in that office tonight wasn't over. Not by a long shot. And despite all the reasons why this was a bad idea, all the workplace complications, the power imbalance, the potential gossip, A small, rebellious part of her was glad. Because for once in her life, someone had seen past her carefully constructed professional facade. And that someone happened to be the most powerful, intimidating, and intriguing man she'd ever met. What she didn't know as she hailed a taxi and headed home was that Thomas Richardson was still standing at the window of his office, watching her small figure on the street below, his phone still in his hand, wondering what had possessed him to send that message, and why for the first time in years he was actually looking forward to coming to work tomorrow morning. Jasmine arrived at work earlier than usual the next day. Her night had been restless, filled with dreams that left her flushed and confused when she woke. She needed time to compose herself before facing him. The office was quiet, the morning sun casting long shadows across the polished floors. She set about her usual routine, brewing the special coffee blend he preferred, organizing the day's schedule, preparing briefing notes for his meetings. Her hands moved automatically through these familiar tasks while her mind raced with questions and scenarios. Would he mention what happened? Would he act like nothing had changed? Would he send her to work in another department out of embarrassment? Worst of all, had she imagined the look in his eyes? The ping of the elevator announced someone's arrival. Jasmine straightened her blouse, smoothed her skirt, and took a deep breath. The footsteps were familiar, confident, measured, purposeful. Thomas Richardson never rushed, never dragged his feet. He moved like a man who knew exactly where he was going and what he would do when he got there. "Good morning, Jasmine." His voice was neutral, professional, exactly as it would be on any other day. But when she looked up, his eyes told a different story. They lingered on her face a moment too long, carried a warmth that hadn't been there before. "Good morning, Mr. Richardson. Your coffee is ready, and I've prepared the files for your meeting with the board at 10. She handed him the coffee mug, careful to avoid brushing his fingers with hers. "Thank you." He took the mug, then paused. "About last night?" "It won't happen again," she said quickly. "I usually make sure the floor is empty before It was unprofessional of me." Something flickered across his face. Disappointment? "That's not what I was going to say." He glanced around, noting the early arrivals beginning to filter into the outer office. "Come into my office for a moment, please." Jasmine followed him, acutely aware of curious glances from the few employees already at their desks. This wasn't unusual, she often had morning briefings with the CEO, but today it felt different. Today everything felt different. Thomas closed the door behind them, set his coffee on the desk, and turned to face her. The morning light streaming through the windows highlighted the silver at his temples, the lines around his eyes that spoke of both authority and weariness. "I want to apologize for startling you last night," he said. "And for the text message. It was inappropriate." "It's okay," Jasmine said, feeling a twinge of disappointment she knew she shouldn't feel. "No, it's not." He ran a hand through his dark hair, a rare gesture of uncertainty from a man who projected nothing but confidence. "I'm your boss. There are boundaries." Jasmine nodded, looking down at the carpet. "Of course. I understand. But," he continued, his voice softening, "I meant what I said. You are beautiful when you dance. You looked free, happy. It's not a side of you I've seen before." She looked up, surprised by his candor. It's always been my escape. A way to forget everything else for a while." "What are you trying to escape?" he asked. The question caught her off guard. It was personal, too personal for a conversation between a CEO and his assistant. Yet something in his eyes made her want to answer honestly. "The feeling of being stuck," she admitted. "Of being invisible. Of being just a function rather than a person." Thomas studied her face, his expression thoughtful. "You've never been invisible to me, Jasmine." The statement hung between them, loaded with implications neither of them was ready to explore. The intercom on his desk buzzed, breaking the moment. "Mr. Richardson? Your conference call with Tokyo is scheduled to begin in 5 minutes, came the receptionist's voice. He reached over and pressed the button. "Thank you, I'll be right with them." He looked back at Jasmine. "We should continue this conversation another time." "Yes, sir," she said, reverting to formality, unsure of what had just happened between them. "And Jasmine," he said as she reached for the door, "you don't need to stay so late to finish your work. If there's too much on your plate, we can adjust your workload." "It's not that," she said. "I like the quiet of the office at night. It's peaceful." He nodded slowly. "Well, if you do stay late again, don't stop dancing on my account." She felt heat rise to her cheeks as she left his office, closing the door softly behind her. As she walked back to her desk, she felt different, seen in a way she hadn't been before. Whatever boundaries had existed between them had shifted, if only slightly. The day passed in a blur of meetings, phone calls, and emails. Jasmine maintained her professional demeanor, but she was acutely aware of Thomas's presence whenever he was nearby. She caught him watching her several times, not with the intensity of the previous night, but with a thoughtful curiosity that made her wonder what he was thinking. By the time evening came, most of the staff had left, but Jasmine found reasons to stay. She told herself it was to finish a report due the next day, but in truth she was waiting. For what, she wasn't entirely sure. She was organizing files when Thomas emerged from his office, suit jacket slung over his arm, tie loosened. "Still here?" he asked, stopping by her desk. "Just finishing up a few things," she said, gesturing to her computer screen. He nodded, then seemed to hesitate before speaking again. "I'm having dinner with some investors tonight. Nothing formal, just a business discussion at Le Krillin." Le Krillin was one of the most exclusive restaurants in the city, the kind of place where a single meal cost more than Jasmine's weekly grocery budget. "Would you like me to call ahead and confirm your reservation?" she offered, reaching for the phone. "Actually," he said, "I was wondering if you'd like to join us." Jasmine's hand froze midair. "Join you? But I haven't prepared any materials for." "Not as my assistant," he clarified. "As yourself. These investors are particularly interested in our company culture, how we develop talent. I think they'd appreciate meeting someone who knows the company inside and out, but from a different perspective than mine." It was a reasonable explanation, a professional request. Yet the look in his eyes suggested there might be more to it. "I'm not exactly dressed for Le Krillin," she said, gesturing to her simple work attire. "There's a boutique on the ground floor of this building. I'm sure they could help you find something suitable." He pulled out his wallet and extracted a black credit card. "Company expense, of course." Jasmine hesitated. This felt like crossing a line, yet it was framed in entirely professional terms. What could she say? "All right," she agreed finally. "What time is the reservation?" 8 o'clock. "I can have my driver pick you up at the boutique entrance at 7:30. She nodded, taking the credit card he offered. "I'll be ready." As Thomas walked toward the elevator, Jasmine sat back in her chair, her mind racing. Was this simply a business dinner or something more? And why did the thought of it being something more make her heart beat faster despite all the reasons it shouldn't? She didn't have answers, but as she gathered her things and headed for the boutique, she knew one thing for certain. Tonight would change things between them, one way or another. The question was she ready for that change? The boutique staff fussed over Jasmine like fairy godmothers preparing Cinderella for the ball. When she mentioned Thomas Richardson's name, their attitudes had shifted from polite assistance to downright reverence. Apparently, the CEO was a valued client who occasionally sent special guests their way. "Mr. Richardson called ahead," the manager explained as she guided Jasmine through racks of designer clothing. "He mentioned you need something for Le Krillin this evening." An hour later, Jasmine barely recognized herself in the mirror. The dress they'd selected was elegant without being overly formal. A deep burgundy that complemented her brown skin and fell just below her knees. The boutique stylist had quickly arranged her hair in a simple but sophisticated updo, and their makeup artist had enhanced her features with a subtle touch. "Perfect," the manager declared, surveying the final result. "Mr. Richardson will be pleased." The comment sent an unexpected flutter through Jasmine's stomach. She reminded herself firmly that this was a business dinner, nothing more. She would be representing the company, not herself. At precisely 7:30, the sleek black company car pulled up to the boutique entrance. The driver, a middle-aged man named Carter who had worked for Richardson Industries for years, held the door open for her. "Good evening, Miss Jasmine," he said with a respectful nod. "You look lovely tonight." "Thank you, Carter," she replied, sliding into the back seat and smoothing her dress nervously. The drive to Le Krillin took 20 minutes through evening traffic. Jasmine spent it going over company facts and figures in her head, preparing for whatever business discussion might take place. But beneath the professional preparation, other thoughts intruded. The way Thomas had looked at her when she danced, the unexpected text message, his declaration that she had never been invisible to him. The restaurant was every bit as opulent as she had imagined. Crystal chandeliers, plush carpeting, waitstaff who moved with ballet-like precision. The maitre d' led her through the main dining room to a private area in the back, where Thomas was already seated with 2 other men. He stood as she approached, and for a moment Jasmine saw something in his eyes that made her breath catch. Appreciation, yes, but something deeper too. Something that had nothing to do with business. Gentlemen, this is Jasmine Williams, my executive assistant and one of our most valuable team members. Thomas introduced her smoothly. Jasmine, meet Howard Tanaka of Tanaka Investments and Peter Dvorak of European Capital Partners. The men stood politely, shaking her hand. They were both in their 60s, well-dressed and carrying the confident air of men who controlled vast sums of money. Please sit, Thomas gestured to the empty chair beside him. As she took her seat, he leaned in slightly and whispered, "You look stunning." The dinner progressed with surprising ease. Despite her initial nervousness, Jasmine found herself contributing meaningfully to the conversation. The investors seemed genuinely interested in her perspective on company operations, asking thoughtful questions about employee satisfaction and internal communications. "You see, Howard, this is exactly what I was telling you about," Thomas said at one point, gesturing toward Jasmine. "The strength of our company isn't just in our executive leadership or our market position. It's in people like Jasmine who understand the organization at every level." "Impressive indeed," Mr. Tanaka agreed, raising his wine glass in a small salute to her. "And refreshing to see a CEO who recognizes the value of his staff." As the evening wore on, the conversation shifted from business to more personal topics. Jasmine learned that Mr. Dvorak had 5 grandchildren, that Mr. Tanaka was an avid sailor, and that Thomas, unexpectedly, had a passion for classical music. "Thomas plays the piano beautifully," Mr. Tanaka informed her. "Though he's too modest to admit it." "I had no idea," Jasmine said, genuinely surprised. In all the time she'd worked for him, managing his calendar and organizing his life, she'd never known about this. "There's a lot you don't know about me," Thomas said quietly, echoing her words from the night before. By the time dessert arrived, the investors had clearly been won over, not just by Thomas's business acumen but by the obvious respect between him and his staff. As they were finishing their coffee, Mr. Tanaka's phone buzzed with a message. My wife reminds me we have an early flight tomorrow," he said, checking the screen. "Peter, shall we call it a night?" As the men exchanged goodbyes and made plans for future meetings, Jasmine prepared to leave as well. But Thomas placed a light hand on her arm. "Stay for another moment?" he asked. "There's something I'd like to discuss with you." Curious and a little apprehensive, she nodded, settling back into her chair as the investors departed with final handshakes and smiles. When they were alone, Thomas signaled to the waiter for fresh coffee, then turned to face her fully. "You were wonderful tonight," he said. "They're going to invest and it's largely because of you." "I hardly did anything," she protested. "I just answered their questions honestly." "Exactly." He smiled. "Your authenticity is rare in this world. Refreshing." He paused, seeming to consider his next words carefully. "Like your dancing." Jasmine felt her cheeks warm at the mention of that night. "About that. I've been thinking about what you said," he interrupted gently. "About feeling invisible. About being stuck." He leaned forward slightly. "I have a proposition for you, Jasmine. A professional one," he added quickly. "What kind of proposition?" she asked, intrigued despite herself. "We're opening a new division next month focused on employee development and corporate culture. It needs a director, someone who understands people, who sees what others miss." His eyes held hers steadily. "I think you would be perfect for the role." Jasmine stared at him, stunned. "But I'm just an assistant. I don't have the qualifications for a director position." "You have exactly the qualifications I'm looking for," he countered. "Intelligence, empathy, attention to detail, and a perspective that's different from the typical executive viewpoint." "I don't understand," she said slowly. "Why now? I've been your assistant for over a year." Thomas was quiet for a moment, swirling the remaining coffee in his cup. "Because until I saw you dancing, I didn't fully see you. Oh, I knew you were competent, dedicated, invaluable as an assistant. But that night I saw your passion, your spirit." He set the cup down. "And I realized I've been wasting your potential." The confession hung between them, honest and unexpected. Jasmine didn't know how to respond. Was this a genuine professional opportunity, or something complicated by whatever was developing between them? "I need time to think about it," she said finally. "Of course." He nodded. "Take all the time you need. The position won't be officially announced for 2 weeks." As they left the restaurant together, the night air cool against their skin, Thomas's driver pulled up smoothly to the curb. "Let me take you home," Thomas offered. "That's not necessary," Jasmine began, but he cut her off gently. "Please. It's late and it's the least I can do after keeping you out for a business dinner." She relented, giving Carter her address as she slid into the back seat. Thomas joined her, sitting close enough that she could smell his cologne. Subtle, expensive, with notes of cedar and something darker she couldn't identify. The car pulled away from the curb, gliding through streets that were quieter now, the city starting to wind down even as Jasmine's thoughts raced faster. They rode in silence for several minutes, the space between them charged with unspoken words. "Thank you for the dress," she said finally, needing to break the silence. "I'll return it tomorrow." "Keep it," he said. "It suits you." She glanced at him, finding his eyes already on her. "That wouldn't be appropriate." A small smile touched his lips. "Consider it a signing bonus for your new position. If you accept, of course. And if I don't? Then consider it a thank you for years of excellent service." They lapsed into silence again as the car wound through residential streets, approaching her neighborhood. It was a modest area, nothing like the exclusive enclave where Thomas undoubtedly lived. Jasmine felt suddenly self-conscious, aware of the vast differences in their lives. As the car pulled up to her apartment building, Thomas spoke again, his voice low. "I meant what I said about the position, Jasmine. It has nothing to do with whatever this is between us." She turned to face him fully. "And what exactly is this between us, Mr. Richardson?" "Thomas," he corrected gently. "And I don't know yet. But I'd like to find out." He reached out, his fingers lightly touching hers where they rested on the seat between them. "If you would." The touch was electric, sending a current up her arm that had nothing to do with the cool night air. Jasmine knew she should pull away, establish clear boundaries, keep things professional. But something in his eyes, vulnerability beneath the confident exterior, held her there. "This is complicated," she said softly. "Yes." He didn't deny it, didn't offer false reassurances. "But some complications are worth exploring." Carter discreetly cleared his throat from the front seat, reminding them they weren't truly alone. Jasmine withdrew her hand, reaching for the door handle. "Good night, Thomas," she said, his first name feeling strange and intimate on her lips. "Good night, Jasmine," he replied. "I'll see you tomorrow." As she climbed the stairs to her apartment, Jasmine's mind was a whirlwind of conflicting thoughts. The job offer was tempting, a genuine opportunity for advancement, for making a difference in the company. But could she separate that from the growing attraction between them? Should she even try? Inside her apartment, she kicked off her heels and sank onto the couch, closing her eyes. The memory of Thomas's fingers against hers lingered, as did the look in his eyes when he'd first seen her at the restaurant. Her phone buzzed with a text message. She pulled it from her purse, her heart skipping when she saw it was from him. "Whatever you decide about the position, know that it's offered because of your merit, not because of tonight. You've earned it, Jasmine. Sleep well." She read the message twice, feeling something shift inside her. In all her years of working, of struggling to be seen and valued, no one had ever recognized her potential this way. Maybe this was a beginning, not just of something between her and Thomas, but of a new chapter in her professional life. A chance to step out of the shadows and into a role where she could make a real difference. As she got ready for bed, Jasmine made a decision. She would accept the position. And as for Thomas Richardson and the electricity between them, that was a complication she would have to navigate carefully, one step at a time. What she didn't know was that across town, in his penthouse apartment, Thomas was standing at the window with a glass of scotch in his hand, thinking about her. Not just as a woman who intrigued him, but as someone who might transform his company in ways he had only begun to imagine. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of activity. Once Jasmine accepted the position, Thomas wasted no time preparing her for the transition. Her days became a balance of handling her regular assistant duties while being introduced to her future responsibilities. "The official announcement goes out Monday," Thomas told her on Friday afternoon as they finished reviewing the structure of the new division. "Are you ready?" "As ready as I'll ever be," Jasmine replied, trying to project confidence despite the butterflies in her stomach. This was a major leap, from executive assistant to division director, skipping several rungs on the corporate ladder. People would talk. People would question. People would wonder why she, of all employees, had been chosen. Thomas seemed to read her thoughts. "You deserve this position, Jasmine. Never doubt that." They had been careful during these 2 weeks, maintaining strict professionalism in the office. No more late-night dance sessions, no lingering looks, no touched fingers in the back of company cars. The attraction between them hadn't diminished. If anything, it had intensified with proximity, but both understood the importance of establishing Jasmine in her new role before complicating matters further. There will be a reception Monday evening to introduce you to the board and other directors, Thomas continued. Nothing too formal, just drinks and conversation. Jasmine nodded, making a mental note to find something appropriate to wear. The burgundy dress from Le Crillon was too elegant for an office function, despite Thomas's insistence that she keep it. Don't worry about the board members, he added, noting her expression. I've already briefed them on your qualifications. They support the decision. All of them? She asked skeptically, thinking specifically of Victor Hargrove, a notoriously conservative board member who believed in traditional corporate hierarchies. Thomas's smile was wry. Let's say the majority support is strong enough that the dissenters are keeping their opinions to themselves for now. As they wrapped up the meeting, Thomas checked his watch. It's getting late. Do you have plans for the weekend? The question was casual, but Jasmine sensed something beneath it. Nothing special. Some shopping, maybe catch up on reading. He nodded, hesitating before speaking again. I was thinking of visiting the botanical gardens tomorrow. They have a new exhibit of rare orchids. He paused. Would you like to join me? The invitation hung between them, not a business dinner, not a work function, but a personal outing. A date in all but name. Is that a good idea? Jasmine asked quietly. Before the announcement, I mean. Probably not, he admitted. But I found myself thinking more about good ideas lately, and less about what other people might say. His eyes held hers. Still, I understand if you'd rather wait. Jasmine considered the implications. If someone from the company saw them together on a weekend, rumors would start. On the other hand, once the announcement was made, any personal relationship between them would be equally scrutinized. What time should I meet you? She heard herself say. His smile was immediate, transforming his usually serious face. I could pick you up at 11? The morning light is best for the photography exhibit they also have. I'll be ready, she agreed, returning his smile. The weekend outing felt like crossing a threshold, acknowledging that whatever was building between them extended beyond the office walls. As Jasmine left work that evening, she felt a mix of anticipation and anxiety about what the next few days would bring, both professionally and personally. Saturday morning dawned clear and warm. Jasmine spent more time than usual selecting her outfit. Casual but flattering jeans, a soft blue blouse, comfortable walking shoes. She was applying a light touch of makeup when her phone buzzed with a text from Thomas. Outside when you're ready. No rush. She peered through her window blinds, expecting to see his usual black company car. Instead, a silver sports car was parked at the curb, Thomas leaning against it casually, dressed in jeans and a light sweater that transformed him from imposing CEO to approachable, handsome man. When she came outside, his eyes lit up with appreciation. You look lovely, he said simply. So do you, she replied, taking in the sight of him in casual clothes. Nice car. My weekend indulgence, he admitted, opening the passenger door for her. I don't get to drive it as often as I'd like. The botanical gardens were on the outskirts of the city, about a 40-minute drive. As they left the urban streets behind, Jasmine felt herself relaxing. Away from the office, away from the roles of boss and assistant. They were just two people enjoying a beautiful spring day. Conversation flowed naturally as Thomas navigated the winding roads. He told her about his childhood fascination with plants, his college years studying business while taking botany classes as electives. Jasmine shared stories of her grandmother's small garden in the city, how she'd learned to nurture living things in the smallest of spaces. That's why I dance, she explained. It's about making something beautiful in whatever space you have. My grandmother taught me that, to create beauty wherever you are. Thomas glanced at her, his expression thoughtful. I'd like to have seen her garden. She would have liked you, Jasmine said, surprising herself with the comment. She had no patience for pretense, but she respected passion. And you think I have passion? He asked, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. I know you do. I've seen it when you talk about the company, about your vision for it. She paused. And when you watch me dance. The admission hung between them, honest and a little daring. Thomas's hands tightened slightly on the steering wheel. You've been watching me too, he observed quietly. Yes, she acknowledged. I have. At the botanical gardens, they wandered through exhibits of plants from around the world, pausing longest in the orchid house. The flowers were extravagant, almost otherworldly in their beauty. My mother loved orchids, Thomas said, stopping before a particularly striking purple bloom. She always said they reminded her that beauty doesn't have to be practical to be valuable. She sounds wise, Jasmine commented. She was. His expression softened with memory. She died when I was in college. Cancer. Sometimes I wonder what she would think of what I've built. I think she'd be proud, Jasmine said gently. Not just of the company but of the man you've become. He looked at her, something vulnerable in his gaze. How can you be so sure? You've only known me as your boss. I've seen more than you think, she replied. The way you treat people, the opportunities you create, how you listen, really listen, when others speak. She smiled slightly. Even your choice for your new division director shows good judgment. That made him laugh, the sound warming her more than the sun streaming through the glass ceiling. They continued through the gardens, stopping for lunch at the small cafe overlooking a Japanese-inspired landscape of stone and carefully pruned trees. As they ate, Thomas asked about her dreams, her aspirations beyond the new position. I want to make a difference, she said after considering the question. To create systems where people feel seen, valued for who they are, not just what they produce. That's why you're perfect for this role, he said. You understand what most executives miss. That companies are made of people, not just positions on an organizational chart. After lunch, they discovered a secluded path that wound through a wooded area. Few other visitors had ventured this way, and they found themselves alone among tall trees and dappled sunlight. May I ask you something personal? Thomas said as they walked side by side, close but not quite touching. Of course. Why have you stayed as an assistant for so long? Someone with your intelligence, your insight, you could have moved up long ago. Jasmine took her time answering, wanting to be honest. Fear partly. The comfort of knowing exactly what's expected of me. And, she hesitated, I've had bosses before who made it clear that's all they saw me as. An assistant. A function, not a person with potential. Thomas stopped walking, turning to face her. I'm sorry if I ever made you feel that way. You didn't, she assured him. But I had learned to make myself smaller by then, to fit expectations rather than challenge them. Until you danced, he said softly. Until you saw me dance, she corrected. That's what changed things. Being seen. They stood there in the filtered sunlight, the moment stretching between them like a living thing. Thomas reached out slowly, giving her time to step back if she wanted to, and brushed a strand of hair from her face. I see you, Jasmine, he said quietly. I have for longer than you know. The touch of his fingers against her cheek was gentle, questioning. Jasmine knew this was another threshold, one that, once crossed, would change everything between them irrevocably. She made her choice, stepping closer, her eyes holding his. Understanding her intent, Thomas leaned down, his lips meeting hers in a kiss that was tentative at first, then deepening as she responded. His arms encircled her waist, drawing her against him, and she felt the solid strength of him, the warmth. When they finally pulled apart, both slightly breathless, Jasmine knew there was no going back to the careful distance they had maintained. No pretending this was anything less than what it was. A connection that transcended professional boundaries. What happens Monday? She asked softly, still within the circle of his arms. Monday you become Director Williams officially, he replied. And we figure out the rest as we go. People will talk, she warned. They'll say I got the position because of this. Let them talk, Thomas said, his voice firm. Your work will silence them eventually. And I'm not concerned with gossip. They walked back toward the main gardens hand in hand, both aware that once they left this secluded path, they would need to be more discreet. But for now, in this moment, they allowed themselves the simple pleasure of touch, of connection. The rest of the afternoon passed in easy companionship. They explored the photography exhibit Thomas had mentioned, discovering a shared appreciation for black and white landscapes. They talked about books they'd loved, places they hoped to visit someday, the small details that made up their separate lives. As the day drew to a close, neither wanted it to end. Have dinner with me? Thomas asked as they walked back to his car. I know a place by the river where no one from the company ever goes. I'd like that, Jasmine agreed, feeling lighter than she had in years. The restaurant was as promised, a small, family-owned place overlooking the river, with tables spaced for privacy and lighting dim enough to create intimacy without sacrificing the view. Over plates of excellent food, they continued to learn each other, the conversation flowing as naturally as the river outside. Tell me about your family, Jasmine prompted, curious about the man behind the executive facade. Thomas twirled his wine glass thoughtfully. Not much to tell. Only child. Father was rarely home, building his business empire. Mother was my anchor until she died. After that, he shrugged. I poured myself into work. Became my father in some ways, I suppose. "And now?" she asked. His eyes met hers across the table. "Now I'm wondering if there might be more to life than quarterly reports and board meetings." The simple admission spoke volumes. Jasmine reached across the table, her fingers touching his. "I think there is." Later, as Thomas drove her home, a comfortable silence filled the car. This day had shifted something fundamental between them, and both were still adjusting to the new reality. At her apartment building, he walked her to the door, pausing under the soft glow of the entry light. "Thank you for today," he said, his voice low. "Thank you for asking me," she replied, looking up at him. He leaned down, kissing her once more, a gentle promise of things to come. "I'll see you Monday, Director Williams." Jasmine smiled, liking the sound of that title on his lips. "Until Monday, Mr. Richardson." As she watched him drive away, Jasmine knew that whatever challenges awaited them come Monday morning, they would face them together, not just as CEO and new director, but as two people who had found something unexpected and precious in each other. Monday morning arrived with a nervous energy that permeated Jasmine's entire being. She dressed with special care, a charcoal gray suit that projected authority while still feeling true to her style, low heels that were professional yet comfortable enough for what would undoubtedly be a long day, and the simple gold necklace her grandmother had given her for graduation. "For the days when you need to remember who you really are," her grandmother had said. Today felt like exactly such a day. The office was already buzzing when she arrived. News of her promotion had leaked despite Thomas's efforts to control the announcement, and she could feel eyes following her as she made her way to her desk. Some gazes were curious, others speculative, a few openly disapproving. "Is it true?" whispered Melanie, the marketing assistant whose desk was nearby. "You're becoming a director?" Jasmine nodded, keeping her expression neutral. "The official announcement will be sent out this morning." "Wow," Melanie breathed, clearly impressed. "That's quite a jump. Congratulations." "Thank you," Jasmine replied, grateful for the genuine support. Not everyone was as kind. As she organized her desk, her last day in this familiar space, she overheard snippets of conversation from passing employees. "Must be nice to have the boss's favor. Wonder what she did to earn that promotion. Completely unqualified if you ask me." The comments stung, but Jasmine had anticipated them. Any rapid promotion would raise eyebrows. The fact that Thomas was young, single, and undeniably attractive only fueled the speculation. What hurt most was the suggestion that she hadn't earned this opportunity through her own merit. At precisely 9 a.m. the company-wide email went out. "Richardson Industries is pleased to announce the creation of our new Employee Development and Corporate Culture Division, effective immediately. This division will focus on enhancing workplace satisfaction, developing internal talent, and strengthening our corporate values across all departments. We are proud to name Jasmine Williams as the division's inaugural director. Ms. Williams brings extensive knowledge of company operations, exceptional interpersonal skills, and innovative thinking to this important role. Having worked closely with executive leadership, she possesses unique insights into how our corporate values can be better integrated into daily operations. Please join us in congratulating Director Williams on her new position. A reception will be held this evening at 5:30 p.m. in the executive conference room to welcome her to the leadership team." The email was signed by Thomas, with endorsements from the board chairperson and the head of human resources. It was as official and legitimate as any executive announcement could be. Still, the whispers continued. Jasmine kept her head high as she packed her personal items from her assistant's desk, preparing to move to her new office on the executive floor. She was placing her grandmother's photo in a box when a shadow fell across her desk. "Planning your escape already?" The voice belonged to Victor Hargrove, the board member Jasmine had worried about. In his 60s, with steel gray hair and cold eyes, he represented old money and older attitudes about corporate hierarchy. "Good morning, Mr. Hargrove," Jasmine said politely, straightening. "Just preparing for the move to my new office." He studied her with undisguised skepticism. Quite a move indeed. Executive assistant to division director in one step. Impressive. The implication in his tone was clear. Jasmine met his gaze steadily. "I'm looking forward to the challenge." "I'm sure you are." His smile didn't reach his eyes. Thomas has always had an eye for talent. Before Jasmine could respond, another voice cut in. "Victor, I see you've heard our good news." Thomas approached, his expression pleasant but his eyes sharp with warning as they met Hargrove's. The older man straightened slightly. "Just congratulating Ms. Williams on her remarkable advancement," Hargrove said smoothly. "Director Williams," Thomas corrected mildly. And yes, it is remarkable. But then we pride ourselves on recognizing exceptional potential, don't we? Even when it comes from unexpected places. The two men engaged in a silent battle of wills, decades of boardroom politics condensed into a single exchange of glances. Finally, Hargrove inclined his head slightly. Indeed we do. Well, best of luck, Director Williams. I'll be watching your progress with great interest. As he walked away, Thomas turned to Jasmine. Don't let him intimidate you. Hargrove's old school, thinks everyone should climb the corporate ladder one rung at a time, preferably taking decades to do it. Like he did? Jasmine asked. Exactly like he did. Thomas's smile was wry. He's never quite forgiven me for becoming CEO at 35. Now, are you ready to see your new office? The new office was on the executive floor, not far from Thomas's own. Spacious and bright, with windows overlooking the city and sleek, modern furnishings, it made her assistant's desk seem like a distant memory. Do you like it? Thomas asked as she walked around the space, trailing her fingers over the polished desk. It's beautiful, she admitted. A little intimidating. You'll make it your own, he assured her. And Jasmine? He waited until she looked at him. You deserve to be here. Remember that when the whispers get loud. Throughout the day, Jasmine was introduced to her new team, a diverse group of HR specialists, training coordinators, and corporate communication experts who would help implement her vision for the division. Most seemed cautiously receptive, though a few exhibited the same skepticism Hargrove had shown. By the time the evening reception arrived, Jasmine was exhausted but determined. She refreshed her makeup, straightened her suit, and prepared to face the executive team as a peer rather than a subordinate. The executive conference room had been transformed for the occasion. Tasteful floral arrangements decorated the long tables, which now held an elegant spread of hors d'oeuvres and drinks. Soft music played in the background, creating an atmosphere that was formal but not stuffy. Jasmine took a deep breath before entering, reminding herself that she belonged here. Thomas had seen potential in her that others had missed, including herself. She wouldn't let him down. The room was already half full when she arrived. Conversations paused momentarily as heads turned to observe her entrance, then resumed with slightly lowered voices. Jasmine moved through the crowd with as much confidence as she could muster, accepting congratulations with gracious smiles. There she is. Thomas's voice carried across the room as he approached, flanked by several board members. The woman of the hour. In his tailored suit and commanding presence, he was every inch the CEO, maintaining a professional distance that revealed nothing of their Saturday kiss or shared dinner. Jasmine matched his tone, nodding respectfully. Thank you for this opportunity, Mr. Richardson, she said formally. The opportunity was earned, he replied. Then, turning to the board members, Gentlemen, let me properly introduce you to Director Williams. I believe some of you met briefly at the Le Krillin dinner. Jasmine recognized Mr. Tanaka and Mr. Dvorak, who greeted her warmly. The others, 3 men and 1 woman, all with the polished appearance of longtime executives, were new to her. I've heard impressive things, said the woman, introducing herself as Diana Chin, head of international operations. Thomas says you have fresh ideas for our corporate culture initiatives. I do, Jasmine confirmed, feeling on more solid ground when discussing work rather than navigating the social subtexts of the reception. I believe we can build stronger teams by recognizing individual strengths and creating systems that honor diverse perspectives. The conversation flowed into specific ideas, and Jasmine found herself genuinely engaged, her initial nervousness receding as she spoke about concepts she had considered for years but never had the platform to express. Fascinating approach, commented one of the older board members. Not traditional but potentially effective. I look forward to seeing the results. As the evening progressed, Jasmine circulated through the room, meeting other executives and directors she had known only as names on memos or voices on conference calls. Some were openly supportive, others reserved judgment, but all treated her with the respect her new position commanded. She was speaking with the chief financial officer when she felt a presence at her elbow. Turning, she found Hargrove watching her with calculating eyes. You handle yourself well in this crowd, he observed. Better than I expected. Thank you, Mr. Hargrove, Jasmine replied, choosing to take the comment at face value rather than acknowledge its patronizing undertone. I wonder, he continued, lowering his voice, if you've considered the implications of your rapid rise. I'm not sure I understand, she said, though she understood perfectly well. Hargrove's smile was thin. Richardson Industries has always prided itself on propriety. Appearances matter in our position. And you're concerned about how my promotion appears? Jasmine kept her voice steady, though her heart was beating faster. I'm concerned about many things, Director Williams, including Thomas's judgment when it comes to certain personal matters. His gaze flicked across the room to where Thomas stood talking with a group of executives. He's a brilliant businessman, but occasionally lets other factors influence his decisions. The insinuation was unmistakable. Jasmine felt a flash of anger but controlled it carefully. Mr. Hargrove, I understand your concern for the company's reputation. Rest assured, I take my new responsibilities seriously and intend to prove my value through results, not words. Before he could respond, Thomas appeared beside them, his timing either coincidental or deliberately protective. Victor, I see you're getting to know our newest director better. Indeed, Hargrove replied smoothly. We were discussing the importance of perception in corporate leadership. A favorite topic of yours, Thomas noted dryly. If you'll excuse us, I need to borrow Director Williams for a moment. Board Chairperson Evans wanted to discuss her budget allocation. As Thomas guided her away with a light touch at her elbow, Jasmine felt Hargrove's eyes following them, assessing, calculating. The old man might be traditional in his views, but he was shrewd and influential. He could make her new position significantly more challenging if he chose to. What did he say to you? Thomas asked quietly once they were out of earshot. Nothing direct, Jasmine replied. Just implications about propriety and appearances. Thomas's jaw tightened. Victor likes to throw his weight around. Don't let him intimidate you. I won't, she promised. But he does raise a valid point. People are going to speculate about why you promoted me, especially if they suspect there's something between us. They had reached a quiet corner of the room, partially screened by a large floral arrangement. Thomas glanced around, ensuring they weren't overheard. Do you regret Saturday? He asked, his voice low. No, Jasmine answered without hesitation. But I'm concerned about how it affects my credibility here. I want to succeed in this role, Thomas. I want to prove you made the right choice, professionally. He nodded, understanding. What do you suggest? Distance, she said reluctantly. At least here at work. Until I've established myself in the position. Thomas considered this, his expression thoughtful. Reasonable, he conceded finally. But difficult. I know. Their eyes met briefly, the memory of Saturday's kisses an almost tangible presence between them. All right, he agreed. Professional distance it is, for now. His emphasis on the last words carried a promise that made her pulse quicken despite her own suggestion. They rejoined the reception separately, Jasmine making a point to engage with executives from various departments, establishing herself as a knowledgeable and thoughtful addition to the leadership team. By the end of the evening she felt she had made progress, not enough to silence all doubts, but enough to begin building the foundation for her future success. As the reception wound down and guests began to leave, Jasmine found herself unexpectedly alone with Diana Chin, the International Operations Director. You've handled today well, the older woman commented, her shrewd eyes assessing Jasmine with interest. Not easy stepping into a director role with so much scrutiny. Thank you, Jasmine replied, appreciating the straightforward acknowledgement of her situation. Word of advice? Diana offered. Results silence criticism faster than anything else. Focus on delivering those and the whispers will fade. I intend to, Jasmine assured her. Diana nodded approvingly. Good. And for what it's worth, she glanced across the room to where Thomas was speaking with the last remaining board members. I think Thomas made an excellent choice. Not just because of whatever might be developing between you two, but because I've watched you work for the past year. You see things others miss. Jasmine stared at the woman, startled by her perceptiveness. Diana smiled slightly. I've been in business a long time, Director Williams. I recognize attraction when I see it. Just be smart about how you handle it. With that parting advice, Diana excused herself, leaving Jasmine to consider her words. Apparently, their careful professionalism hadn't been enough to completely hide the connection forming between her and Thomas, at least not from the most observant eyes. As the reception finally ended, Jasmine gathered her things, preparing to head home after the longest and most transformative Monday of her career. Thomas approached as she was slipping on her coat. Your car is waiting downstairs, he said loud enough for the few remaining staff to hear. Company car service for directors. One of the perks. Thank you, Mr. Richardson, she replied formally. Only when they stepped into the elevator alone did his professional facade soften slightly. You were magnificent today, he said quietly. I was terrified, she admitted. No one could tell. His smile was warm with admiration. Hargrove didn't know what hit him. The elevator reached the lobby too quickly. As they stepped out, Thomas maintained a proper distance. The car will take you home safely. Get some rest. Good night, Mr. Richardson, she said, conscious of the security guard watching from his desk. Good night, Director Williams. As Jasmine settled into the back of the luxury sedan that would now be part of her daily life, she felt the weight of the day, the doubts, the whispers, the challenges ahead, but also the victories, the supportive allies, and the promise of what might develop between her and Thomas once she had proven herself. Her phone buzzed with a text. Thomas, of course. You belong in that office. Never doubt it. And when you're ready, when we're ready, we'll figure out the rest. Sleep well. Jasmine smiled, tucking the phone away as the car pulled into traffic. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in her career, she felt truly seen. Not just by Thomas but by herself. And that made all the difference. The first month in Jasmine's new role passed in a whirlwind of activity. She threw herself into establishing the division, meeting with department heads to understand their needs, researching best practices for employee development, and putting together a team that shared her vision. True to their agreement, she and Thomas maintained professional distance at work. Their interactions were cordial but formal, focused entirely on business matters. If others noticed the occasional lingering glance or the way they sometimes finished each other's sentences in meetings, no one commented openly. Hargrove remained a skeptical presence, questioning Jasmine's proposals in board meetings and making thinly veiled comments about experience and traditional qualifications. But as Diana Chen had predicted, results were beginning to speak for themselves. Jasmine's first initiative, a cross-departmental mentorship program, had been implemented with immediate positive feedback. Her second, a redesigned performance review system that emphasized growth over criticism, was in development with strong support from multiple directors. The latest satisfaction survey results, Jasmine announced, standing at the head of the conference table during the monthly executive meeting. As you can see, departments participating in the pilot mentorship program show a 12% increase in employee engagement scores. She displayed the data on the large screen, the numbers and graphs telling a clear story of improvement. Around the table, executives nodded with varying degrees of approval. Even Hargrove looked thoughtful rather than dismissive. Impressive start, Director Williams, Diana Chen commented. What's your next step? Expanding the program company-wide, Jasmine replied confidently, and integrating it with our revised performance review system to create cohesive development paths for employees at all levels. Thomas, seated at the head of the table, maintained a neutral expression, but Jasmine caught the flash of pride in his eyes. Questions for Director Williams before we move to the next agenda item? He asked the group. Just one, Hargrove said, leaning forward. These programs require significant time investment from our senior staff. How do you propose to balance mentorship activities with existing productivity requirements? It was a fair question, one Jasmine had anticipated. We've developed a structured approach that limits mentor-mentee meetings to 2 hours per week, scheduled during what our productivity tracking shows are typically lower output periods. Additionally, we've created digital resources to supplement in-person mentoring, reducing the time burden while maintaining effectiveness. Hargrove nodded slowly, not entirely convinced but unable to find obvious fault with her answer. We'll see how it scales, he said finally. After the meeting, executives filtered out of the conference room, many stopping to congratulate Jasmine on her presentation. She was gathering her materials when Thomas approached, keeping a professional distance but speaking quietly. Dinner tonight? He asked, his voice low enough that only she could hear. To celebrate your success. 1 month in and you're already changing things for the better. They had been careful to limit their personal interactions outside of work, meeting only occasionally for private dinners where they could talk freely, away from curious eyes and office politics. These evenings had become precious to Jasmine. Opportunities to share not just her professional challenges but her hopes, her doubts, her dreams. I'd like that, she agreed with a small smile. The usual place? He nodded. 8 o'clock? I'll make the reservation. As Jasmine returned to her office, she felt a familiar warmth spreading through her chest. The connection between them had only deepened over the past month, growing richer and more complex as they balanced professional respect with personal attraction. Nothing had progressed beyond intense conversations and occasional kisses, both aware of the need to establish her professional credibility before complicating matters further, but the potential simmered between them, a constant undercurrent to their interactions. Her assistant, Marcus, looked up as she entered. "The team from Human Resources is ready for your 2 o'clock meeting," he informed her. "And Miss Chen called to say she'd like to meet with you privately when you have time this afternoon." "Thank you, Marcus. Could you schedule Miss Chen for 4 o'clock, please?" The afternoon passed in a blur of meetings and decisions. By the time Diana Chen arrived for their appointment, Jasmine was running on her 3rd cup of coffee and the adrenaline of productive work. "Hope I'm not interrupting your momentum," Diana said as she settled into a chair across from Jasmine's desk. "Not at all," Jasmine assured her. "What can I do for you?" The older woman studied her for a moment before speaking. "I want to talk to you about the Richardson Foundation's annual gala next week." Jasmine nodded. The gala was a major event on the corporate calendar, a charity fundraiser that brought together executives, board members, major clients, and community leaders. She had attended the previous year as Thomas's assistant, handling logistics from the sidelines. "As a director, you'll be expected to attend in a more visible role this year," Diana continued. "It's an important opportunity to solidify your position with the board and key stakeholders." "Of course," Jasmine agreed. "I've already confirmed my attendance." "Good. But there's something else you should be prepared for." Diana leaned forward slightly. "Victor Hargrove will be watching you and Thomas like a hawk. The gala is a social event, which makes it more difficult to maintain the professional distance you've been so careful about in the office." Jasmine felt a flash of concern. "Has there been talk?" "Nothing concrete," Diana assured her. "You've both been admirably discreet. But Hargrove is suspicious by nature, and he's looking for any ammunition he can find to undermine your position." "Why are you telling me this?" Jasmine asked, curious about the other woman's motives. Diana smiled slightly. "Because I recognize talent when I see it, and your programs are exactly what this company needs. I'd hate to see your effectiveness compromised by corporate politics." She paused. "And because I was once in a similar position." "You were?" Jasmine couldn't hide her surprise. 20 years ago," Diana nodded. "Different company, different man, but similar dynamics. I know how challenging it can be to navigate both a new executive role and a complicated personal relationship." "What happened?" Jasmine asked, intrigued by this unexpected glimpse into the older woman's past. "We were less careful than you and Thomas have been," Diana admitted. "The relationship became public before I had fully established myself. It created obstacles." "And the relationship?" "Ended badly," Diana said simply. "But that was about the people involved, not the circumstances. My point is that timing matters. Perception matters." Jasmine nodded, understanding the warning. "Thank you for the advice. I'll be particularly careful at the gala." "One more thing," Diana added, rising to leave. "If you're serious about Thomas, and from what I observe you are, then at some point you'll need to be public about it. When that time comes, do it on your terms, not because Hargrove or anyone else forces your hand." After Diana left, Jasmine sat at her desk, contemplating the older woman's advice. The gala was indeed a potential minefield. Unlike office meetings with their clear professional structures, social events blurred boundaries. A look that lasted too long, a touch that seemed too familiar, any small gesture could fuel speculation. She was still considering this when her phone buzzed with a text from Thomas. "Looking forward to tonight. Also, have you thought about the gala next week? As a director, you'll need something suitably impressive to wear. Company can cover it if needed." Jasmine smiled at his thoughtfulness, then frowned slightly as she considered the implications. Thomas accompanying her to shop for a gala dress would certainly raise eyebrows. Even having the company pay for her attire might fuel rumors about special treatment. "Thanks, but I've got it covered," she texted back. "See you at 8. That evening at their usual restaurant, a small, elegant place where they were known simply as regular customers rather than CEO and director. Jasmine shared Diana's warning about the gala. "She's right," Thomas acknowledged, swirling the wine in his glass thoughtfully. "Hargrove will be watching us carefully. He's always looking for ways to reassert his influence on the board." "Does it bother you?" Jasmine asked. "Having to be so careful about—" She gestured between them. "This?" Thomas considered the question. "Yes and no," he said finally. "Yes, because I find myself wanting to spend more time with you, to explore whatever this is between us without worrying about corporate politics. But no, because I understand the importance of establishing your leadership independently." He reached across the table, his fingers brushing hers briefly. "You're extraordinary at what you do, Jasmine. I want everyone to recognize that on its own merit." His words warmed her, reinforcing what she already knew, that his interest in her professional success was genuine, separate from his personal attraction to her. The gala will be a challenge, she admitted. Social settings make it harder to maintain boundaries. We'll manage, he assured her. And Jasmine? He waited until she met his eyes. This won't be forever. Just until your position is secure, until no one can question your accomplishments. The promise in his words sent a thrill through her. They hadn't discussed the future explicitly, but this acknowledgement of their relationship as something with a trajectory, a potential beyond their current careful dance, made her heart beat faster. Over dinner they discussed safer topics, her division's progress, upcoming initiatives, books they'd both read recently. But underneath the conversation ran a current of anticipation, of possibilities yet to be explored. As they parted outside the restaurant, Thomas hailed a taxi for her. "Text me when you get home safely," he requested, his hand lingering on hers for just a moment as he helped her into the car. "I will," she promised, reluctant to end the evening but aware of the late hour and the early meetings awaiting both of them tomorrow. At home, Jasmine kicked off her heels and curled up on her couch, texting Thomas as promised. His reply came quickly. "Thank you for tonight. For everything you're doing at the company. For being patient with our situation. Sleep well, Jasmine." She smiled, typing back, "Patience has its rewards. Good night, Thomas." As she prepared for bed, Jasmine's thoughts turned to the upcoming gala. Diana's warning echoed in her mind, along with her final piece of advice, that eventually, they would need to be public about their relationship, and it should be on their terms. But first, she needed to solidify her position beyond any doubt. The gala would be another test, another opportunity to prove herself not just to the board, but to everyone watching and wondering if she truly deserved her rapid rise. And she was determined to pass that test with flying colors, no matter how difficult it might be to keep her growing feelings for Thomas Richardson hidden from sharp-eyed observers like Victor Hargrove. The Richardson Foundation annual gala was held at the Grand Imperial Hotel, the city's most prestigious venue. Marble columns soared to gilded ceilings, crystal chandeliers cast prismatic light over elegant flower arrangements, and the city's elite circulated in designer formalwear, clinking champagne glasses and making the connections that often proved more valuable than the charitable donations themselves. Jasmine arrived alone, having arranged her own transportation rather than accepting the company car service Thomas had offered. Every detail mattered tonight: appearances, timing, interactions. She had chosen her dress carefully, a deep emerald green that complemented her skin tone, sophisticated but not overly sexy, with a modest neckline and a skirt that fell just below her knees. Professional, elegant, appropriate for her new position. She paused at the entrance to the grand ballroom, taking a moment to compose herself before stepping into the spotlight. As a director now, she would be expected to mingle with board members, major donors and community leaders, no longer the assistant who stood in the background handling logistics. "Director Williams. You look lovely." Diana Chin approached, resplendent in a structured black gown that perfectly suited her commanding presence. The International Operations Director offered a genuine smile as she handed Jasmine a glass of champagne. "Thank you," Jasmine replied, returning the smile. "You look stunning yourself." "One of the perks of the job," Diana commented dryly. "Getting dressed up a few times a year to charm potential business partners." She glanced around the room. "Speaking of which, there are several people you should meet tonight. Follow me." For the next hour, Diana guided Jasmine through the intricate social landscape of the gala, introducing her to influential figures in the business community and philanthropic world. Jasmine was grateful for the older woman's mentorship, recognizing that these connections could be invaluable as she developed her division. "Jasmine Williams. Our newest director." The booming voice belonged to Howard Tanaka, the investor from the dinner at Le Krillin, who approached with his wife on his arm. The elderly Japanese businessman beamed at her. "Mr. Tanaka, lovely to see you again," Jasmine greeted him warmly. "I was just telling my wife about your innovative employee development programs," he said. "Thomas speaks very highly of your work." "Does he now?" A new voice joined the conversation. Victor Hargrove, immaculate in his tuxedo, a glass of scotch in his hand. "Our CEO has been quite the champion of Director Williams's talents." The slight pause before talents carried a world of insinuation. Jasmine felt Diana stiffen beside her, but kept her own expression pleasant. "Mr. Hargrove," she acknowledged. "I'm glad Mr. Richardson sees value in the programs we're implementing. The early results have been encouraging." "Indeed," Hargrove said silkily. Thomas has always had an eye for potential. Sometimes before others can see it. A rare quality in leadership, Mr. Tanaka interjected, his tone suggesting he recognized Hargrove's implications and disapproved. The ability to identify talent that others miss. Jasmine felt a rush of gratitude toward the older investor. The foundation gala seems to be a great success this year, she said, deliberately changing the subject. Have you had a chance to view the silent auction items, Mr. Tanaka? As the conversation shifted to safer topics, Jasmine maintained her composure, though she could feel Hargrove's calculating gaze on her. When the group eventually dispersed, Diana stayed close, her presence a silent support. Handled perfectly, the older woman murmured. Don't let him rattle you. I won't, Jasmine assured her, though her heart was beating faster than she would have liked. It was nearly an hour into the event before Jasmine caught sight of Thomas. As CEO and the foundation's chairman, he had been occupied with major donors and press interviews from the moment the gala began. He stood across the ballroom, tall and commanding in his tuxedo, surrounded by a group of community leaders. As if sensing her gaze, he looked up, their eyes meeting across the crowded room. For a brief moment, the noise and movement around them seemed to fade. Thomas gave her a small, warm smile before returning his attention to the conversation at hand. That single look, though entirely proper, carried such intimacy that Jasmine felt her cheeks warm. She turned away quickly, focusing on the art curator beside her who was describing the foundation's latest cultural initiative. Director Williams. The voice at her elbow startled her. Board chairperson Evans, a dignified woman in her 60s who rarely attended regular office meetings, had appeared at her side. Chairperson Evans, Jasmine greeted her respectfully. It's a pleasure to see you this evening. Walk with me a moment, the older woman requested, gesturing toward a quieter area near the terrace doors. Curious, Jasmine followed. Once they were relatively isolated from the crowd, Evans spoke directly. I've been reviewing the reports on your division's initiatives. Impressive work for someone so new to the executive level. Thank you, Jasmine replied, pleased by the unexpected praise. I must admit, I had reservations when Thomas first proposed your promotion, Evans continued candidly. Such a significant advancement is unusual, to say the least. Jasmine maintained a neutral expression, waiting for the chairperson to continue. But the results speak for themselves, Evans acknowledged. Your mentorship program has shown remarkable success in a short time. The board is pleased. Jasmine nodded, grateful for the validation but sensing there was more to this conversation. Thank you for saying so. Evans studied her for a moment, her experienced eyes missing nothing. Victor Hargrove has been vocal about his concerns regarding your relationship with Thomas. So there it was, the real purpose of this conversation. Jasmine felt her stomach tighten but kept her expression composed. Mr. Richardson and I maintain a strictly professional relationship at work, she said carefully. At work, yes, Evans agreed, her tone neutral. What happens outside office hours is technically not the board's concern. But in reality? Jasmine asked, appreciating the older woman's directness. Evans sighed. In reality, perception matters in positions like yours and Thomas's. The company's reputation, shareholder confidence, employee morale, all can be affected by leadership dynamics. I understand, Jasmine said quietly. I believe you do, Evans nodded. Which is why I'm not here to lecture you or pry into your personal life. I simply want you to know that while Hargrove does not speak for the entire board, his concerns are not entirely unreasonable. Jasmine considered her next words carefully. May I ask, Chairperson Evans, what is your personal view? The older woman's expression softened slightly. My personal view is that Thomas Richardson is the most effective CEO this company has ever had, and that your contributions already show tremendous promise. My professional obligation is to ensure that neither of those valuable assets is compromised by complications. A fair assessment, Jasmine acknowledged. For what it's worth, Evans added, I've known Thomas since he was a young man working under his father. He does not make decisions lightly, professionally or personally. With that, she glanced toward the ballroom. I believe our presence is required for the formal program. Shall we? As they rejoined the main gathering, Jasmine felt both warned and reassured by the conversation. Evans had been surprisingly understanding, but the underlying message was clear: proceed with caution. The formal program began with Thomas taking the stage to welcome guests and highlight the foundation's achievements over the past year. Jasmine watched him from her table, struck as always by his natural authority and genuine passion when speaking about the foundation's work. This year we've expanded our educational initiatives to reach over 5,000 underprivileged students, he announced, the pride in his voice evident. Each of those students represents not just a life potentially transformed, but a community strengthened. As he continued outlining the Foundation's goals for the coming year, Jasmine felt a surge of admiration for the man behind the CEO title. Thomas truly believed in making a difference, in using his position and resources to create meaningful change. Following his speech, dinner was served and the evening's entertainment began, a talented jazz quartet that provided a sophisticated backdrop to the ongoing conversations around the ballroom. Jasmine found herself seated with Diana Chin, Howard Tanaka and his wife, and several other executives she had met during her first month as director. The conversation flowed easily, focusing primarily on the Foundation's work and broader business trends. Jasmine contributed thoughtfully, aware that each interaction tonight was an opportunity to solidify her position as a legitimate member of the leadership team. After dinner, the dance floor opened and couples began to move to the music. Diana excused herself to speak with international clients, leaving Jasmine momentarily alone at the table. She was considering visiting the silent auction display when a shadow fell across her. "May I have this dance, Director Williams?" Thomas stood beside her, hand extended, his expression appropriately professional though his eyes held warmth visible only to her. Jasmine hesitated, aware of the potential for gossip. A CEO dancing with his newest director would certainly be noticed. But refusing would seem odd, perhaps even disrespectful at such a social function. "Of course, Mr. Richardson," she replied, placing her hand in his and rising from her seat. As he led her to the dance floor, Jasmine was acutely conscious of eyes following them. Hargrove's calculating gaze from the bar, Evans's thoughtful observation from her table near the stage, numerous other executives and board members noting this public interaction. Thomas placed his hand properly at her waist, maintaining a respectable distance between them as they began to move to the music. His touch was light, professional, yet Jasmine felt electricity where his fingers rested against the small of her back. "You look beautiful tonight," he said quietly, his voice pitched for her ears alone. "Thank you," she replied equally softly. "You clean up pretty well yourself." His lips curved in a small smile. "I've been wanting to speak with you all evening. Foundation obligations." "I understand," she assured him. "I've been well taken care of. Diana has been introducing me to everyone." "I noticed." His eyes held hers. "You're making quite an impression. Evans mentioned she spoke with you." "She did," Jasmine confirmed. "About Hargrove's concerns." Thomas's jaw tightened slightly, but his steps never faltered. "Victor needs to focus on his own affairs." "He's not entirely wrong though, is he?" Jasmine pointed out gently. "About the complications." Thomas was silent for a moment as they turned smoothly with the music. "No," he admitted finally. "But some complications are worth navigating." The simple statement, echoing his words from that first night in the car, made Jasmine's heart beat faster. Before she could respond, the music changed to a faster tempo, and Thomas stepped back, releasing her. "Thank you for the dance, Director Williams," he said, his voice returning to its normal volume as another couple moved past them. "My pleasure, Mr. Richardson," she replied formally. They parted ways, each returning to their professional duties, Thomas to meet with major donors, Jasmine to continue building connections with company stakeholders. But the brief dance had left her feeling both unsettled and certain. Unsettled because of the growing complications in their situation. Certain because the connection between them only seemed to strengthen despite the challenges. Later in the evening, as the gala was beginning to wind down, Jasmine found herself on the terrace, taking a moment of quiet away from the noise and social expectations of the ballroom. The night air was cool against her skin, the city lights spread out below like earthbound stars. "There you are." She turned to find Thomas standing in the terrace doorway, his bow tie slightly loosened, looking more approachable than he had all evening. "Just getting some air," she explained as he joined her at the stone balustrade. "Mind if I join you?" "It's your foundation," she reminded him with a small smile. He chuckled, moving to stand beside her, careful to maintain an appropriate distance even in this more private setting. "How are you holding up? These events can be exhausting." "I'm good," she assured him. "It's been an interesting evening. Educational." "Oh." He raised an eyebrow. "What have you learned?" Jasmine considered the question. "That corporate social dynamics are more complex than I realized as an assistant. That perceptions matter almost as much as reality. That Hargrove really doesn't like me. Thomas laughed softly at the last observation. Victor doesn't like change. Or challenges to his worldview. You represent both. And you? She asked, turning slightly to study his profile in the soft lighting from the terrace sconces. What have you learned tonight? His expression grew more serious. That watching you from across a room, knowing I can't approach you the way I want to, is even more difficult than I anticipated. The honest admission hung between them, heavy with implication. Jasmine glanced toward the ballroom, but the terrace doors were partially obscured by potted plants, giving them a momentary illusion of privacy. This isn't going to get easier, is it? She asked softly. No, he admitted. If anything, it becomes more challenging the more I get to know you. He turned to face her fully. Jasmine, Thomas? There you are. The moment shattered as Victor Hargrove stepped onto the terrace, his timing so unfortunately perfect that Jasmine wondered if it was deliberate. The older man's gaze moved between them, noting their positions, the private nature of their conversation. The mayor is leaving and wants to speak with you before he goes, Hargrove informed Thomas, his tone perfectly proper while his eyes conveyed something else entirely. Of course, Thomas replied smoothly. I'll be right there. He turned back to Jasmine. Excuse me, Director Williams. Duty calls. Of course, Mr. Richardson, she responded, equally formal. As Thomas moved past Hargrove toward the ballroom, the older man remained, his calculating gaze now fixed solely on Jasmine. Lovely evening for air, he commented, his apparent casualness belied by the intensity of his scrutiny. Indeed, Jasmine agreed, refusing to be intimidated. You know, Hargrove continued conversationally, I've been on the board of Richardson Industries for nearly 20 years. I've seen CEOs come and go. Seen countless promising careers rise and fall. Is there a point to this history lesson, Mr. Hargrove? Jasmine asked directly. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Merely an observation that in business as in life, actions have consequences. Sometimes far-reaching ones. I'm well aware of that fact, she replied evenly. Are you? He challenged softly. I wonder. Thomas is not just any CEO, you understand. His family name is on the building. The Richardson Foundation's reputation affects countless charitable initiatives. His position, and by extension the company's stability, depends on maintaining certain standards. Jasmine met his gaze steadily. If you have concerns about my professional conduct or qualifications, Mr. Hargrove, I suggest you raise them directly with the board in an appropriate forum. Oh, I have no concerns about your qualifications, he said, the false pleasantness dropping from his tone. You're clearly intelligent and capable. My concern is about judgment, both yours and Thomas's. Before Jasmine could respond, Diana Chin appeared in the terrace doorway. There you are, Jasmine, she called, her sharp eyes taking in the situation immediately. I've been looking everywhere for you. Could I borrow you for a moment? The director of the children's program would love to hear about your mentorship initiative. Grateful for the intervention, Jasmine nodded. Of course. If you'll excuse me, Mr. Hargrove. As Diana led her back into the ballroom, the older woman spoke quietly. Hargrove cornering you alone? Apparently he has concerns about my judgment, Jasmine replied dryly. Hargrove has concerns about anything he can't control, Diana corrected. Don't let him rattle you. The remainder of the evening passed without further incident. Jasmine continued to network and represent her division professionally, though she was careful to avoid situations where she and Thomas might be observed together. As the gala finally came to an end, she prepared to leave, gathering her wrap and evening bag. Thomas was still surrounded by board members and major donors, his CEO responsibilities keeping him at the center of attention until the last guest departed. Walking through the hotel lobby toward the exit, Jasmine heard rapid footsteps behind her. She turned to find Thomas approaching, having momentarily escaped his duties. You're leaving? He asked, stopping at a proper distance. Yes, it's been a long evening, she replied, aware of hotel staff and lingering gala attendees nearby. Let me arrange a car for you, he offered. That's not necessary, she assured him. I already called a taxi. He nodded, clearly wanting to say more but constrained by their surroundings. You were wonderful tonight, he said instead, his voice professional while his eyes communicated much more. The board was impressed. Thank you, she replied. It was an educational experience. Hargrove? He guessed, his expression darkening slightly. Among others, she said. Nothing I couldn't handle. Pride flickered across his features. I never doubted that. He glanced toward the ballroom where his name was being called. I should get back. Of course, Jasmine agreed. Good night, Mr. Richardson. Good night, Director Williams. As her taxi pulled away from the hotel, Jasmine leaned back against the seat, emotionally exhausted from the evening's careful navigation of social and professional expectations. Her phone buzzed with a text message from Thomas. I wish we could have finished our conversation on the terrace. Another time when we're not surrounded by watchful eyes. You truly were beautiful tonight in every way. The simple message warmed her despite the evening's complications. She typed back. Another time. Sleep well when you finally escape your CEO duties. His response came quickly. I'll be dreaming of you. Jasmine smiled, tucking the phone away. The gala had been a success professionally. She had made valuable connections, impressed board members, established herself as a legitimate executive. But personally, it had highlighted the growing challenge of balancing her deepening feelings for Thomas with the realities of their positions. As the taxi wound through nighttime streets toward her apartment, Jasmine found herself wondering how long they could maintain this careful separation between their professional and personal lives. Something would have to give eventually. The question was, what would it be and at what cost? 3 months into Jasmine's tenure as director, Richardson Industries hosted its quarterly leadership retreat at a secluded mountain resort. All directors and vice presidents were required to attend the 3-day event, which combined strategic planning with team-building activities and informal networking opportunities. Under normal circumstances, Jasmine would have looked forward to the retreat. Her division was thriving, with her mentorship program now fully implemented across the company and showing measurable improvements in employee retention and satisfaction. Her position within the executive team had solidified, with even skeptics like Hargrove grudgingly acknowledging her contributions during board meetings. But the retreat presented a new challenge: 3 days in close proximity to Thomas, away from the structured environment of the office, in settings that blurred the lines between professional and social interaction. The cabins are quite private, Diana Chin commented casually as they shared a ride to the resort. Each executive gets their own, spread out along the lake. Very peaceful. Jasmine caught the subtle message behind Diana's seemingly innocent observation, an assurance that discretion would be possible, should she and Thomas choose to take advantage of it. In the months since the gala, Diana had become not just a professional mentor but something of a confidant, offering veiled advice about navigating the complexities of Jasmine's situation. I'm looking forward to the solitude, Jasmine replied neutrally. It's been a busy quarter. Indeed it has, Diana agreed. You've accomplished remarkable things in a short time. The board has noticed. They arrived at the resort by mid-afternoon, checking into their separate cabins before gathering at the main lodge for the retreat's opening session. The resort was as beautiful as promised. Rustic luxurious cabins nestled among pine trees, overlooking a crystal-clear mountain lake, with hiking trails winding into the surrounding forest. Thomas was already at the lodge when Jasmine arrived, deep in conversation with several board members who had been invited to participate in the strategic planning sessions. He glanced up as she entered, their eyes meeting briefly across the room. The connection was electric even at a distance, intensified by months of careful restraint. For the past 3 months, they had maintained their professional relationship at work while finding occasional evenings to meet privately, away from corporate eyes. These dinners and conversations had only deepened their connection, revealing layers of compatibility beyond the initial attraction. Thomas had shared more of himself. His childhood as the heir to a business dynasty, his complicated relationship with his father, his genuine desire to make the company a force for positive change. Jasmine, in turn, had opened up about her own past, growing up with limited resources but abundant love, her grandmother's influence on her values, her struggle to be seen as more than just an efficient assistant in previous positions. Each revelation had drawn them closer, making the necessary professional distance more challenging to maintain. Yet both recognized the importance of establishing Jasmine's credibility beyond any doubt before acknowledging their personal relationship publicly. The retreat's opening session focused on the company's 5-year strategic plan, with each department director presenting their division's goals and initiatives. When Jasmine's turn came, she stood confidently before her peers, outlining her vision for employee development with clarity and passion. The data is clear, she concluded, gesturing to the presentation screen behind her. Our mentorship program has already reduced turnover by 15% in participating departments, and our revised performance review system is showing similar early results in employee satisfaction and productivity. By extending these initiatives and introducing our new career pathing program, We project a company-wide improvement of 22% in retention and 18% in engagement scores over the next 2 years. The response was overwhelmingly positive, with several directors asking thoughtful questions about implementation and metrics. Even Hargrove, present as a board representative, limited himself to a single pointed question about cost projections, a far cry from his earlier skepticism. Thomas's contribution was minimal, a brief acknowledgement of her presentation's thoroughness and a question about scaling the program internationally. To the group, he appeared appropriately professional. Only Jasmine recognized the pride in his eyes, conveyed in a glance too brief for others to notice. As the first day sessions concluded and executives dispersed to freshen up before dinner, Jasmine returned to her cabin, feeling a mix of professional satisfaction and personal anticipation. The retreat schedule included substantial free time for networking and informal discussions, opportunities when she and Thomas might find moments of privacy. Her phone buzzed with a text message as she was changing for dinner. "Your presentation was brilliant. Walk by the lake after dinner? Tea." She smiled, typing back, "Thank you. And yes, some fresh air would be nice." Dinner was served in the lodge's spacious dining room, with executives mingling freely around large round tables. Jasmine found herself seated with Diana, the chief technology officer, and several other directors, including some she knew less well. The conversation ranged from company matters to personal interests, creating the relaxed atmosphere the retreat was designed to foster. Thomas sat at a different table with board members and senior vice presidents, appropriately focused on his immediate dinner companions. Only occasionally did his glance drift toward Jasmine, the brief connection across the room a secret current between them. After dinner, executives broke into informal groups, some heading to the lodge's bar for continued conversation, others organizing an impromptu poker game, a few returning to their cabins for early rest before the next day's activities. Jasmine slipped out quietly, wrapping a light shawl around her shoulders against the cool evening air as she made her way down the path toward the lake. The resort grounds were beautifully illuminated with subtle landscape lighting, providing guidance while preserving the natural darkness of the mountain setting. She reached the lakeside first, pausing to admire the reflection of stars on the still water. The night was quiet except for the occasional call of wildlife and the soft rustle of wind through pine needles. After months of city noise and office bustle, the natural silence felt like a luxury. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Thomas's voice came from behind her, soft but distinct in the quiet night. He approached slowly, coming to stand beside her at a distance that could appear proper if anyone happened to pass by. "Breathtaking," Jasmine agreed, her eyes on the starlit view. "I forget sometimes how much I miss nature living in the city." "My father had a cabin about 2 hours from here," Thomas said, his voice reflective. "Nothing as luxurious as this resort, just a simple place he'd retreat to when corporate life became too overwhelming. It's the only place I ever saw him truly relaxed." "Do you still have it?" she asked, curious about this glimpse into his past. "Yes." He smiled slightly. "I go there sometimes when I need perspective. No cell service, no internet. Just trees and silence." "Sounds perfect," Jasmine said sincerely. "I'd like to show it to you someday," he offered, the invitation hanging between them, a future possibility, a step beyond their careful present. "I'd like that," she replied softly. They stood in companionable silence for a moment, watching the play of moonlight on water. Despite the lack of physical contact, Jasmine felt more connected to him here, away from office politics and corporate expectations, than she had in weeks of professional interactions. "How are you really doing?" Thomas asked finally, his voice gentle. "With everything, the new position, the scrutiny, the balancing act we've been maintaining?" Jasmine considered the question honestly. "It's been challenging, but rewarding too. I love the work, Thomas. Making real changes in how people experience their careers, creating systems that help them grow. It's everything I hoped it would be." "And the other aspects?" he pressed gently. She glanced at him, the moonlight silvering his profile. "Having to pretend there's nothing between us? That part is increasingly difficult." The admission was quiet but heartfelt. "Especially on days when all I want is to share a success with you or ask your advice, or simply have dinner without carefully selecting a restaurant where no one from the company will see us." Thomas nodded, understanding in his eyes. "I feel the same way. More than you know." A twig snapped somewhere along the path behind them, and they both instinctively stepped apart, the moment of openness interrupted by the possible presence of others. A pair of executives appeared, heading toward the lake on their own evening stroll, nodding politely as they passed. "Perhaps we should walk," Thomas suggested once the others had moved further along the shore. Less conspicuous than standing in one place. They fell into step together, following a winding path that circled the lake. Their conversation shifted to safer topics. The next day's retreat agenda, industry trends, books they'd both read recently. But beneath the ordinary words ran a current of connection that made even simple exchanges meaningful. As they neared the point where the path diverged, one fork leading back to the main lodge, the other toward the executive cabins, Thomas slowed his steps. "Jasmine," he said quietly, "there's something I need to discuss with you. Something important." The seriousness in his tone caught her attention. "What is it?" He glanced around, ensuring they were truly alone. "Not here. Too many people wandering about. Could you come to my cabin? Just for a conversation," he added quickly. "I would never presume." "I know," she assured him, touched by his concern for propriety even now. "Your cabin is fine." His cabin was at the far end of the executive area, the most private of the accommodations, a perk of CEO status that now seemed fortunate for other reasons. Inside, the space was warmly rustic yet elegant, with a stone fireplace, comfortable furniture, and large windows framing the night-darkened forest. Thomas gestured for her to sit on the sofa while he remained standing, an uncharacteristic restlessness in his movements. "What's happening?" Jasmine asked, concern growing at his unusual demeanor. "Is something wrong with the company? With the board?" "No, nothing like that," he assured her quickly. "It's a different matter entirely." He paced briefly before sitting across from her, leaning forward with his forearms on his knees. "I received a call yesterday from James Peterson at Westridge Global." Jasmine recognized the name immediately, the CEO of one of the largest international conglomerates, a company that dwarfed even Richardson Industries in scope and resources. "Peterson is retiring next year," Thomas continued. "Their board has been conducting a very quiet search for his replacement. They've approached me." The implications hit Jasmine with the force of a physical blow. Westridge Global was headquartered on the opposite coast, over 3,000 miles away. If Thomas took the position, everything would change. "That's a remarkable opportunity," she said carefully, trying to process her swirling emotions. "Westridge is in the Fortune top 20, isn't it?" 15, he confirmed. "It would be a significant step up in terms of corporate scale, influence, compensation." His eyes held hers steadily. "But it would mean leaving Richardson Industries. Leaving the city." Leaving her, he didn't say, but the implication hung between them, unavoidable. "When would you need to decide?" she asked, her voice steadier than she felt. "They've given me until the end of the month." 2 weeks. 2 weeks to confront a decision that could alter both their professional and personal trajectories irrevocably. "What are you thinking?" she asked softly. Thomas rose, moving to stand by the window, looking out at the darkness. "Professionally, it's the kind of opportunity most CEOs would consider the pinnacle of achievement. Westridge has reach and resources that Richardson can't match." "But," she prompted, sensing his hesitation. He turned back to face her. "But Richardson is more than just a company to me. It's my family's legacy. It's where I built my career, implemented my vision." He paused. "And now it's where you are." The simple declaration made Jasmine's heart beat faster. "I don't want to be the reason you turn down the opportunity of a lifetime," she said quietly. "You're not a reason, Jasmine," he replied, his voice low and intense. "You're the woman I've fallen in love with." The words hung in the air between them, powerful and transformative. Though the attraction and connection between them had been building for months, neither had put such definitive language to their feelings until now. "Thomas?" she began, not knowing how to respond. He moved back to the sofa, sitting beside her now, close enough to feel her warmth but still not touching. "I don't expect you to say it back. It's not fair to put that on you when I'm facing this kind of decision. I just needed you to know where I stand, what I'm weighing in this choice." Jasmine looked at him, this man who had seen her true potential, who had given her the opportunity to prove herself, who had become increasingly essential to her happiness. The realization crystallized with sudden clarity. "I love you too," she said simply. He stared at her, hope and uncertainty battling in his expression. "Jasmine, you don't have to." "I'm not saying it because you did," she interrupted gently. "I'm saying it because it's true. These past months, getting to know you beyond the CEO title, seeing your intelligence, your integrity, your vision, how could I not fall in love with you?" The confession seemed to release something in both of them. Thomas reached for her hand, his fingers intertwining with hers in a gesture more intimate than any passionate embrace could have been in that moment. So where does that leave us? She asked softly. If you take the Westridge position? Then I would want you to consider coming with me, he said directly. Not immediately, perhaps. You've built something important here and I wouldn't ask you to abandon it without proper transition. But eventually. The offer took her breath away. You would want that? More than anything, he admitted. But I know it's an enormous ask. Your career at Richardson is flourishing. Moving across the country, starting over at a new company, it's not a small thing. No, she agreed thoughtfully. It's not. And if I decline Westridge, he continued, then we face a different question. How long do we continue as we have been? Hiding our relationship, meeting in restaurants where no one knows us, pretending there's nothing between us at work? It was the question that had been hovering on the edges of their relationship for months. Now, forced to the surface by external circumstances, it demanded an answer. I don't know, Jasmine admitted. My position is more established now. The results speak for themselves. But Hargrove and others like him would still use our relationship to undermine my accomplishments, to suggest I didn't earn my place. So we're at a crossroads, Thomas said quietly. It seems we are, she agreed. They sat in silence for a moment, hands still linked, the weight of decisions yet to be made hanging between them. We don't have to solve this tonight, Thomas said finally. We have 2 weeks before I need to respond to Westridge. Time to consider all the implications, all the options. Jasmine nodded, though her mind was already racing with possibilities. If Thomas left for Westridge without her, could their relationship survive the distance? If he stayed, how and when would they acknowledge their relationship publicly? If she eventually followed him to Westridge, would she be able to establish herself independently there, or would she always be seen as the CEO's girlfriend? Whatever happens, Thomas said as if reading her thoughts, know that my feelings for you are not dependent on location or professional circumstances. Whether I'm CEO of Richardson or Westridge or nowhere at all, I love you, Jasmine. The simple declaration warmed her from within. She leaned forward, closing the distance between them, her lips meeting his in a kiss that conveyed everything words couldn't express. Certainty amid confusion, connection despite distance, love in the face of practical challenges. When they finally parted, both a little breathless, Thomas touched her cheek gently. Stay with me tonight, he whispered. Not for anything beyond holding you. I don't want to let you go yet. The request was so honest, so vulnerable coming from a man usually defined by strength and authority, that Jasmine felt her heart expand with love for him. Yes, she said simply. They talked long into the night, curled together on the cabin's sofa, exploring possibilities and concerns, dreams and fears. No final decisions were made, but the conversation itself was a kind of commitment. A shared acknowledgement that whatever choices lay ahead, they would face them together. As dawn light began to filter through the cabin windows, Jasmine reluctantly stirred. I should go back to my cabin, she said softly. People will be up and about soon. Thomas nodded, understanding the continued need for discretion, especially in this setting with executives everywhere. He walked her to the door, pausing to kiss her once more before she slipped out into the early morning light. We'll figure this out, he promised. Whatever comes next. As Jasmine walked quickly along the path to her own cabin, the fresh mountain air cool against her skin, she felt both uncertainty and hope swirling within her. They stood at a crossroads with choices that would reshape both their lives. Yet somehow, the most important choice already felt made. They would face whatever came next together, no longer pretending that what had grown between them was anything less than love. The remainder of the retreat passed in a blur of strategic sessions, team activities, and carefully maintained professionalism. Jasmine and Thomas limited their interactions to appropriate business discussions, though the knowledge of their shared love and the looming decision about Westridge Global added new layers of meaning to even the most casual exchanges. Upon returning to the city, they fell back into their established patterns. Director Williams and CEO Richardson during office hours, Thomas and Jasmine during rare private evenings. But now, every meeting carried the weight of the crossroads they faced. The Westridge offer hung between them, demanding resolution. 1 week after the retreat, Thomas called Jasmine into his office for what appeared to be a routine budget meeting. As she entered, she noticed he had closed the blinds, unusual for middle-of-the-day discussions. Is everything all right? She asked once the door was closed. Not exactly, he replied, his expression troubled. Please sit down. As she took the chair across from his desk, Thomas pushed a tabloid magazine toward her. The cover featured a grainy but recognizable photo of them walking together by the lake during the retreat, with a sensationalized headline, Richardson CEO's secret affair with former assistant. Jasmine felt the blood drain from her face. Where did this come from? Someone at the retreat, obviously, Thomas said grimly. One of our own executives, most likely, though it could have been resort staff. Either way, we have a problem. She picked up the magazine, skimming the article inside. It was mostly speculation and innuendo, with repeated emphasis on her meteoric rise from assistant to director and implications that the promotion had been earned through personal rather than professional means. This is exactly what we were trying to avoid, she said quietly, setting the magazine down. I know. Thomas's expression was a mixture of anger and concern. I've already had calls from 2 board members. Evans is calling an emergency board meeting for tomorrow morning. To discuss us? Jasmine asked, dismayed. Officially, to discuss recent media coverage and its potential impact on company reputation, he quoted. But yes, essentially to discuss us. Jasmine took a deep breath, trying to think clearly despite the churning in her stomach. What happens now? Thomas stood, moving to the window and adjusting the blinds to look out at the city skyline. That depends partly on what we decide about Westridge. Have you made a decision? She asked carefully. He turned back to face her. I've been thinking about little else. Professionally, Westridge offers reach and resources beyond what Richardson can provide. The compensation is exceptional, the challenge compelling. He paused. But there's Richardson's legacy to consider. And us. And what have you concluded? Jasmine pressed gently. Thomas returned to his desk, sitting across from her again. That I want a future with you more than I want the Westridge position. If taking it means losing you, then the decision is simple. His directness took her breath away. Thomas, I don't want you to turn down the opportunity of a lifetime because of me. It's not because of you, he corrected. It's because of us. What we could build together, professionally and personally. Jasmine gestured to the tabloid. But now this changes things, doesn't it? If the board reacts badly? It accelerates our timeline, Thomas acknowledged. We can no longer take our time deciding how and when to go public with our relationship. It's been decided for us. They sat in silence for a moment, considering the implications. Finally, Jasmine spoke. What do you want to do? I want to decline the Westridge offer, Thomas said firmly. Stay at Richardson, face the board together and build a future here, if that's what you want to. The question hung between them, layered with professional and personal implications. Jasmine considered carefully before answering. I want that too, she said finally. I've built something meaningful here, something I believe in. And what we have. She reached across the desk, taking his hand. I'm not willing to give that up either. Relief washed across Thomas's features. Then we faced the board together. Whatever they say, whatever happens, we deal with it as a united front. What do you think they'll do? Jasmine asked. Thomas considered the question honestly. It depends. Hargrove will push for consequences, suggesting your promotion was inappropriate, arguing that our relationship compromises company governance. Others will be more reasonable, especially given your division's clear success. And if they force the issue, she pressed. If they demand your resignation or mine? Then we walk away together, he said simply. I have resources, connections. We both have skills and experience. There are other companies, other opportunities. The conviction in his voice steadied her. For the first time, Jasmine fully recognized that what had grown between them was more than just attraction or even love. It was partnership, a shared vision of what their future could be, both professionally and personally. All right, she agreed. We face it together. They spent the next hour planning their approach to the board meeting, what they would disclose, how they would frame their relationship, what professional boundaries they would commit to maintaining within the company. By the time Jasmine left Thomas's office, she felt prepared, if not entirely calm, about the confrontation ahead. That evening, as she prepared for bed, her phone rang. Diana Chen's name appeared on the screen. I assumed you'd seen it, Diana said without preamble when Jasmine answered. The tabloid? Yes. Thomas showed me today. I thought you'd want to know where the board stands, Diana continued. I've been making calls all afternoon. Jasmine sat on the edge of her bed, grateful for the insider perspective. And? It's divided, as you might expect. Hargrove is rallying the old guard, pushing for punitive measures, primarily focused on you rather than Thomas, of course. Of course, Jasmine echoed dryly. But he doesn't have the votes, Diana continued. Evans is pragmatic. She cares about company performance above all, and your division's results speak for themselves. Tanaka and Dvorak are firmly in your corner. The others are waiting to hear what you and Thomas have to say tomorrow. Thank you for telling me, Jasmine said, relief mingling with continued anxiety. That helps. One more thing, Diana added. Whatever happens tomorrow, remember you've proven yourself. No tabloid story or boardroom politics can take that away. After they hung up, Jasmine slept fitfully, her dreams filled with boardroom confrontations and tabloid headlines. She woke early, preparing herself carefully for what would undoubtedly be one of the most challenging days of her career. The board meeting was scheduled for 8 a.m., early enough to allow decisions before markets opened if necessary. Jasmine arrived at 7:45, finding Thomas waiting in the hallway outside the boardroom. Ready? He asked quietly as she approached. As I'll ever be, she replied, straightening her shoulders. He touched her arm briefly, a gesture of support invisible to anyone who might be watching through the boardroom's glass walls. Remember, whatever happens in there, we face it together. They entered the boardroom side by side. The full board was present, 12 members seated around the massive table, expressions ranging from disapproving to neutral to supportive. Evans sat at the head, her usual position during Thomas's absence, with Hargrove to her right. Thomas, Director Williams, please be seated, Evans began formally. As you're aware, the board has called this emergency meeting to address recent media coverage concerning your personal relationship and its potential implications for company governance. Thomas nodded, his expression calm and controlled as they took their seats. Chairperson Evans, members of the board, before we begin, I would like to make a statement addressing this matter directly. Evans gestured for him to proceed. All eyes in the room fixed on Thomas as he spoke. The tabloid report contains both truths and misrepresentations, Thomas began. The truth is that Director Williams and I have developed a personal relationship. This relationship began to evolve only after her promotion to director, though I acknowledge that my recognition of her professional potential may have been influenced by personal regard. He paused, glancing at Jasmine before continuing. However, the misrepresentation lies in the implication that Director Williams's promotion was based on anything other than merit. Her qualifications, her vision for employee development, and her demonstrated effectiveness were the sole factors in that decision. A decision which, I remind the board, was approved unanimously by this very group. After the fact, Hargrove interjected. We approved the appointment as a courtesy to the CEO, not having been fully informed of the circumstances. What circumstances would those be, Victor? Thomas countered calmly. At the time of Director Williams's promotion, our relationship was strictly professional. The personal aspects developed later, as we worked closely together in her new role. Evans raised a hand to prevent further back and forth. Director Williams, would you care to address the board? Jasmine nodded, gathering her thoughts before speaking. When I was promoted to this position, I committed to proving myself through results, not words. Over the past 4 months, my division has implemented programs that have measurably improved employee retention, satisfaction, and productivity. These achievements stand independent of my personal life. She looked around the table, making eye contact with each board member in turn. I understand the concern about appearances. I understand the questions about conflict of interest. What I ask is that you judge me by my work, not by a sensationalized tabloid story. The room fell silent as board members considered her words. Finally, Evans spoke again. The board must consider several separate issues here. First, whether company policies regarding disclosure of personal relationships have been violated. Second, whether any actual conflicts of interest exist that might compromise corporate governance. And third, how to address the public relations aspect of this situation. What followed was a thorough, and at times uncomfortable, examination of the relationship's timeline, the reporting structures within the company, and the potential impact on shareholder confidence. Thomas and Jasmine answered questions directly and honestly, maintaining their professional composure despite Hargrove's increasingly pointed inquiries. 2 hours into the discussion, Evans called for a brief recess. As board members filed out for coffee, Diana Chin caught Jasmine's eye, giving her a subtle nod of encouragement. When the meeting reconvened, Evans brought the discussion to its conclusion. Having heard from both parties and deliberated on the matter, the board proposes the following course of action, she announced formally. First, we acknowledge that while earlier disclosure of the developing relationship would have been preferable, no specific company policies were violated, as Director Williams does not report directly to the CEO but to the Chief Operating Officer. Jasmine felt a small surge of relief at this first point, though she knew more was coming. Second, Evans continued, To address potential conflicts of interest, we propose that any future performance reviews, compensation decisions, or promotional considerations for Director Williams be conducted by a board committee rather than involving the CEO directly. Thomas nodded his agreement to this arrangement. Third, regarding the public relations aspect, our communications team will prepare a brief, factual statement acknowledging that CEO Richardson and Director Williams are in a relationship that began after her promotion to the executive team. The statement will emphasize that appropriate governance measures are in place to ensure all corporate decisions remain objective and merit-based. Evans looked around the table. Are there any objections to this proposed course of action? Hargrove leaned forward. I believe stronger measures are warranted. At minimum, one party should consider resignation to maintain the company's reputation for ethical leadership. That's unnecessary and punitive, Diana Chin countered immediately. We've established no policies were violated, and Director Williams's department has shown exemplary results. Losing either executive would damage the company far more than this tabloid story. Several other board members nodded in agreement with Diana's assessment. Hargrove, seeing he lacked support, pressed his lips into a thin line but remained silent. If there are no further objections, Evans concluded, then the proposed actions stand. Thomas, Director Williams, thank you for your candor today. The board expects continued excellence from both your departments, and continued discretion in how you conduct your personal relationship within the professional environment. As the meeting adjourned, Jasmine felt a complex mixture of emotions: relief that the immediate crisis had been resolved, lingering anxiety about what would follow, and strange gratitude that the relationship was now acknowledged openly, freeing them from the burden of secrecy. Board members filed out, some offering brief nods or quiet words of support, others maintaining professional distance. Hargrove departed without making eye contact, his dissatisfaction evident in the stiff set of his shoulders. When only Thomas, Jasmine, and Evans remained in the boardroom, the chairperson spoke more informally. That went about as well as could be expected. Victor will continue to grumble, but the majority stands with you, so long as company performance remains strong. Thank you, Margaret, Thomas said sincerely, for your fairness today. Evans gathered her papers, glancing between them. I meant what I said about discretion. The relationship is now acknowledged, but that doesn't mean displays of affection in the office or preferential treatment of any kind. The company will be watching both of you closely. We understand, Jasmine assured her. As Evans left, closing the door behind her, Thomas and Jasmine found themselves alone in the boardroom for the first time since the meeting began. The tension of the past hours seemed to evaporate, leaving behind exhaustion and tentative relief. So, Thomas said quietly, that's done. Yes, Jasmine agreed. No more hiding. No more pretending. He moved closer, taking her hand where it rested on the conference table. And Westridge? You haven't given them your answer yet? She asked. I wanted to wait until after this meeting. To be absolutely certain. Jasmine squeezed his hand gently. And are you? Certain? Thomas smiled, the first genuine smile she'd seen from him all day. Completely. I'm declining their offer. My future is here, with the company and with you. Later that afternoon, after the communications team had released the carefully worded statement and the initial flurry of internal reactions had subsided, Jasmine found a moment to visit Diana Chen's office. Thank you, she said simply as she closed the door behind her. For the advance warning, for speaking up at the meeting, for everything. Diana waved away the gratitude. I recognize talent worth protecting. And relationships worth fighting for. She gestured for Jasmine to sit. So Thomas is declining Westridge? How did you know about that? Jasmine asked, surprised. Diana smiled knowingly. Corporate circles are small at that level. The real question is, what happens next for the two of you? Jasmine considered the question. Professionally, we keep doing what we've been doing, delivering results, building our respective areas. Personally, she paused, we take it one day at a time. No rush, no pressure. Just building something meaningful together. Diana nodded approvingly. A smart approach. And Hargrove. He'll continue to watch for any misstep, Jasmine acknowledged. But as long as my division continues to perform, his complaints will sound increasingly hollow. Exactly, Diana confirmed. Results silence critics faster than anything else. As Jasmine left Diana's office, she found herself smiling despite the emotional exhaustion of the day. The path forward wouldn't be easy, there would be whispers and watching eyes, challenges to her authority, and the constant need to prove herself beyond any doubt. But for the first time since her promotion, she felt free to be fully herself, both professionally and personally. Her phone buzzed with a text from Thomas. "Dinner tonight? Somewhere public. No more hiding." She typed back, "Yes. No more hiding." 6 months after the board meeting that had changed everything, Jasmine stood in the executive floor conference room, presenting the annual results of her division's initiatives. The numbers on the screen behind her told a story of remarkable success. Employee retention up 24%, productivity improved across all departments, and satisfaction scores at their highest levels in company history. "As you can see," she concluded, addressing the gathered executives and board members, "the investment in human capital has yielded returns that exceed our most optimistic projections. The culture shift is measurable not just in statistics but in the quality of work being produced throughout the organization." The response was overwhelmingly positive, with even Hargrove offering grudging acknowledgement of the results. In the 6 months since their relationship had become public, Jasmine had silenced critics through relentless focus on performance, innovation, and measurable outcomes. Her position as a valued member of the executive team was now established beyond question. "Excellent presentation, Director Williams," Evans commented as the meeting concluded. "Your department has become a model that other companies are beginning to emulate." "Thank you, Chairperson," Jasmine replied, gathering her materials as executives filed out of the room. "That's gratifying to hear." Thomas remained seated at the head of the table, reviewing notes from the meeting. Since the board's intervention, they had been scrupulously professional in the office, maintaining appropriate boundaries while no longer hiding the fact that they were a couple. The arrangement had its challenges but had ultimately strengthened both their professional relationship and their personal connection. As the last board member departed, Thomas looked up with a smile. "Impressive numbers." "Thank you," Jasmine replied, returning his smile. "The team deserves most of the credit." "The team has excellent leadership," he countered, rising from his chair. "We still on for dinner tonight?" "Absolutely," she confirmed. "I just need to finish up a few things first." Their evening routine had settled into a comfortable pattern. Work completed with professional focus during the day, personal time guarded and valued in the evenings. They had found a balance that worked, one that allowed both their careers and their relationship to flourish. Later that evening, as they sat at their favorite restaurant, no longer hidden away but a regular spot where they were known and welcomed, Thomas seemed unusually reflective. "Do you remember the first night I saw you dancing?" he asked, swirling the wine in his glass. Jasmine smiled at the memory. "How could I forget? I was mortified." "You were beautiful," he corrected softly. "Free in a way I'd never seen you before. That was the moment I realized how much more there was to you than the efficient assistant I thought I knew." "And now?" she asked, curious where his thoughts were leading. "Now I know even that glimpse barely scratched the surface." He reached across the table, taking her hand. "These past months, watching you overcome every obstacle, silence every critic, build something truly meaningful, I fall more in love with you every day." The sincerity in his voice warmed her. Their relationship had deepened through the challenges they'd faced together, growing stronger as they navigated both professional boundaries and personal connection. "I have something to show you," Thomas said, changing the subject slightly. "After dinner, if you're not too tired?" "Of course," she agreed, intrigued by the hint of excitement in his eyes. After their meal, instead of heading toward either of their apartments, Thomas directed his driver to a different part of the city, the renovated warehouse district that had become a vibrant area of galleries, studios, and upscale lofts. "Where are we going?" Jasmine asked as the car pulled up to a restored industrial building. "You'll see," Thomas replied with a mysterious smile, leading her inside. The building's lobby was elegant in its simplicity, polished concrete floors, exposed brick walls, and sleek modern lighting. Thomas led her to the elevator, using a key card to access the top floor. When the doors opened, they stepped into a spacious loft apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the city skyline. "What is this place?" Jasmine asked, moving toward the windows to admire the breathtaking nighttime vista. "I bought it," Thomas said simply, watching her reaction. "Or rather, I'm thinking of buying it." "That depends on you." She turned to face him, puzzled. "On me? Why?" Thomas moved to join her by the window, taking her hands in his. "Because I'm hoping it will be our home, not just mine. A fresh start, a place that belongs to both of us." Jasmine looked around the space with new eyes, seeing now the potential it held. The open layout perfect for entertaining, the separate office areas where they could each work when needed, the wooden floors that would be ideal for dancing. "Are you asking me to move in with you?" she asked, wanting to be clear about what he was proposing. "I'm asking for more than that," Thomas replied softly. Reaching into his pocket, he withdrew a small velvet box. "I'm asking you to build a life with me, Jasmine. To be my partner in everything, not just at work or at home, but in creating a future together." As he opened the box, revealing a simple but exquisite diamond ring, Jasmine felt tears welling in her eyes. The journey that had begun with that moment of being seen, truly seen, while dancing in an empty office had led here to this man and this question. "I love you," Thomas said simply. "Your strength, your vision, your heart. You've transformed not just the company but my life. Will you marry me?" The answer required no deliberation, no weighing of pros and cons. In her heart, Jasmine had known for months where their path was leading. "Yes," she whispered, joy spreading through her like warmth. "Yes, I will." As Thomas slipped the ring onto her finger and pulled her into his arms, Jasmine felt a sense of completion, of circles closing and new ones beginning. They had overcome corporate politics, public scrutiny, and the complexities of power dynamics to build something genuine and lasting. Later that night, in the empty space that would soon become their home, Thomas connected his phone to a portable speaker, filling the loft with the soft strains of a romantic melody. "May I have this dance?" he asked, extending his hand with a smile. Jasmine stepped into his arms, moving with him across the bare wooden floors, remembering that first night when he had watched her dance alone. Now they moved together, creating something new and beautiful in the shared space between them. "No more hiding," she murmured, echoing the words they had exchanged months ago. "No more hiding," he agreed, holding her close. "Just us, building the future we want, together." As they danced in their soon-to-be home, high above the city lights, Jasmine thought about the journey that had brought them here. From assistant to director, from professional distance to acknowledged love, from being overlooked to being truly seen, every step had led to this moment, this partnership, this promise of a shared tomorrow. The dance continued, and with it, their story, not ending but evolving into something even richer than before. And Jasmine knew, as Thomas held her close against the backdrop of city lights, that being seen for who she truly was had been just the beginning. What followed, the challenges overcome, the trust built, the love discovered, that was the real story. Their story. One that would continue to unfold day by day, dance by dance, for all the years to come.